Shall newsmaker interviews and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, and in just a moment my comedy guests and myself will be taking you through tomorrow morning's newspapers. But first, here's Polly with the news.
And the headlines tonight. Boris Johnson has announced the UK is to send 22 new ambulances to Ukraine within the next few days. That comes after the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, confirmed Britain's going to be sending more military hardware to the war-torn country, saying supplying more equipment and ammunition to Ukraine is the most efficient way to help push back Russian troops.
Russia has so far failed in nearly every one of its objectives. In recognition of this failure, the Russian High Command has regrouped, reinforced and changed focus. To date, we have provided more than 5,000 anti-tank missiles, 5 air defence systems with more than 100 missiles, 1,360 anti-structural munitions, 4.5 tonnes of plastic explosives.
Well, alongside that announcement, the Department for International Trade says monitoring equipment which could be used to spy on Ukrainian citizens is going to be banned from being exported to Russia. That comes as the government says it would remove tariffs or quotas on Ukrainian imports to help maintain their economy whilst the war continues. And President Zelensky has made a direct request to the UK to help with the export of Ukrainian barley, honey, tinned tomatoes and poultry. Here in the UK, GB News can confirm one of the victims stabbed to death in South East London has been named as healthcare worker Dolan Hill. The 64-year-old was married with 2 daughters and was one of 4 victims in the overnight attack. The 3 women and a man were found with injuries at a home in Bermondsey. A man in his 20s has been arrested on suspicion of murder. It's believed all 5 people knew each other. The Speaker of the House of Commons has requested to a meeting with the editor of the Mail on Sunday. It comes after the newspaper published what some are calling misogynistic claims about Labour's deputy leader. The Mail on Sunday reported comments by an unnamed Tory MP that Angela Rayner tried to distract Boris Johnson in the House of Commons by crossing and then uncrossing her legs. And Twitter has accepted Elon Musk's $44 billion offer to buy the social media site. The announcement follows what were reported to be extensive discussions between the Tesla owner and Twitter's board. Musk, who's the world's richest man, previously said Twitter needs to be taken private to grow and become a genuine platform for free speech. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, 2 heavyweights of the UK comedy scene. Now, French gentlemen, in the right corner we have Scott Capurro and in the left, Stephen N. Allen, although in fact those are reverse corners from your political leader. Well, I don't know, we'll find that out. Well, let's leave that as a blank slate. But how are you anyway?
I'm all right, and I was just feeling bloated. Thanks for bringing that up.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right, my husband...
You never look bloated.
You're very sweet to say that, but you've not seen me naked yet. And my husband commented tonight when I was getting dressed to come here, he said, I think we should cut out bread. Bread has to go. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say about bloating, but I always feel a lot lighter generally on my feet these days. I regard toast as a sleeping draft, essentially. It's more of a middle-aged thing, though, yeah. If my daughter rings up, can you come and collect me? I'm like, I'm sorry, I've had my toast. It's just not going to happen. I can't be trusted with heavy machinery.
They'll replace chloroform for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Behind someone with bread.
They say the smell of toast is supposed to be, that means you're having a stroke.
Yeah.
But the eating of toast is pretty similar symptoms in the short term as well. Anyway, we have some headlines to get through. Let's start with the Daily Mail and their front page GPs to vote on closing their doors at just 5 p.m. I must admit that story has escaped the notice of most of the other newspapers. The Daily Telegraph has gone with a very sad story about children's hepatitis outbreak linked to lockdown. And Partygate can't distract Labour from cost of living crisis, Shadow Cabinet tells Starmer. The Guardian have Javid urged to relax law as women forced to travel miles to find HRT, that is hormone replacement therapy, not long-lasting milk. And Elon Musk wins fight to take over Twitter. We will be covering both of those stories, I think. The Financial Times, of course, is very excited about Musk nears the $43 billion deal. Well, I'm afraid the Financial Times has been caught on the hop there because he's nailed it. And Beijing gripped by panic buying as COVID cases show grave rise. The Mirror has bloodbath, Gran among 4 murdered in stabbing frenzy at home. That looks utterly horrific. The Times has passport shambles threatens holidays. There's quite a lot of different stories fighting for prominence on the front pages, and a picture of Michelle Dockery and Laura Carmichael, who are, I believe, in a movie version of Downton Abbey. The Daily Express has new bank holiday to honour the Queen. That sounds ominous to some extent. And Downton picture on their front page as well, and also on the Metro, who have gone with a headline, Musk pays a tweet $35 billion for Twitter. I suppose tweet is supposed to be some sort of pun there, but I can't quite see
Sweet,
what it's for. Sweet, I guess, yeah. So those were your headlines, ladies and gentlemen. We shall now penetrate to the depths of their meaning. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you. You have the biggest story of the day, as far as I'm concerned, one that is developing even since some of the papers went to bed, it seems.
What, that Trump is back on Twitter?
Yeah.
Sorry. Elon Musk has made an offer, and it's been accepted, $54.20 per share, which rounds up to about 44.
Well, you know why he went for that precise sum?
Yeah, because he's a big 420 fan.
420, that's
He
right.
likes his
yeah.
weed. He does.
Yeah.
He said it many times. And I'm sure he'll use Twitter as a platform to federally legalize weed in the U.S., which would be a big step for him. He has bought it, and the council that runs Twitter at first has said they didn't want his offer, that it was too low. Mm-hmm. He lowballed it too much, and then he just said, look, I'm the richest guy in the world. What do you want? Yeah. And they named a figure, and he matched it. So that's what they get.
I mean, it is quite a lot higher than the share price was in, I think it's April the 1st or something.
Than the share price has ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, people are mystified by how Twitter even makes money. And I think that's why the shareholders have suggested this, because they'd like to see a bit of return on their investment from 20 years ago, and they're going to get it now, I think.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how he monetises, because obviously the big news is his attitude to free speech and obviously the single greatest candidate for returning to Twitter on that, as you say, Donald J. I mean, this could actually have some significant political effects.
I suppose, although Donald Trump has said in the past that he wouldn't return to the bird, which I think he means Twitter, or who knows what
that might be a salmonella reference. I don't know. Never reheat the bird a second time.
But, you know, if he changes his mind, we'll accuse him of lying? That'll really make a difference. So it'll be interesting. But the thing is, yes, Elon Musk says he's very much the free speech guy, but everyone thinks they're into free speech as long as the thing you're hearing agrees with yourself. And everyone thinks that the opposing argument shouldn't be given the same free speech, although he did do a nice tweet saying that his biggest critic should still continue to tweet. So I've been busy.
Well, the proof of the pudding, as you say, no battle plan survives engagement with the enemy. But I am interested in one piece of a comment that I've seen a couple of people raise, which is that the government's in this country, the government's new proposed online safety bill will clash with this direction of travel in Twitter. I don't know if you have views on that.
I don't think anyone has total free speech. I don't see anyone saying or hear anyone saying exactly what they think. No. And when they do, if it rarely happens, they're labeled crazy. So I think that I think as comedians, we respect and admire the idea of editing or of boundaries. It makes things funnier, I think. Well,
it's a question of having license, isn't it? It's a fair point. The whole thing of being on stage and having a microphone and having lights is, this could be ironic. Don't take it too seriously. But some people think it still leaches into the... Well, what do you think, Steve? Is it possible to have free speech? I mean, it's a philosophical proposition as much as anything. Is anything we ever say...
Completely free.
Completely, in what sense is it free? Is it free of our own biases? No.
Well, then it's free of our own fear of consequences. So you definitely can be free of the fear of consequence. It's all internalised, it's all in your own head. But that free speech is definitely possible, but the right to be heard is different.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want, but you might end up being the guy in the corner of the pub who's ignored.
Yes.
You can still keep saying it.
And you
This is
can't
the
say...
thing with Twitter, isn't it? Because you have to choose who to follow. I always felt that there should be a little bit more leniency on that front, I suppose. But then, you're not going to have to. You're not forced to see these people's opinions.
And some people, they say whatever they want, as you say. It is true you can, but you might go to jail for it. At least in this country, people have. So
Consequences.
Yeah, there's other consequences, right?
We shall this day light
Right.
such a fire. Tuesday's Times now, and as someone who is not averse to flashing a bit of well-knotted tie, Stephen, to distract and confound your political opponents.
Yeah.
What do you think of this story?
Another day of what I'm calling Pantygate. Not caught on yet. But David Dolan, who's the editor of the Mail on Sunday, has been called to Parliament to have a little chat about this thing that was mentioned, this article that said that there's a Tory MP, unnamed Tory MP, who said that Angela Rayner uncrosses and crosses her legs to distract Boris Johnson in the style of the film Basic Instinct.
Yep.
I
just clarify, is he saying that she does this, or is he saying that he overheard her possibly laughingly claiming, like bragging that she does this? I think that's the key, isn't it? Not that he's observed it and he thinks he's doing it.
Over drinks, too. They were all having a sip, right?
Yeah, but that she's kind of going, ha, 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 you'll never guess what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, for those who haven't seen the film Basic Instinct, I'd refer to the Kenny Everett show.
Yeah.
In the best possible taste.
Cupid stunt, isn't
that's
it?
That's how I try and imagine.
Got through that.
Well done. That's a live show. That was a risk. You got to invite the guy who plucks the pheasants on next.
Yes.
But what are we meant to think about this? That Boris Johnson would be some pre-epic dumb fool who's distracted by women? How could that ever happen?
Absolutely honest, if she were doing it, I think it would have the opposite effect. I think it would spur him on. It probably would remind him of his days in the Oxford Union debating chamber.
What I think it's also doing is revealing what women feel they put up with in Parliament and government, which is a lot of misogyny pointed in their direction.
Well, the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, possibly two separate entities, certainly like to prod this occasionally. I remember a picture of Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon sitting next to each other, and that we were invited as readers, this was about 3 years ago, to compare and contrast the shapeliness of their ankles. It is very extraordinary.
But then I'm not even going to sit here and take any nonsense about Angela Rayner distracting people, whilst there's that thirsty long drink of sexiness, Jacob Rees-Mogg, showing a little bit of sock dart, was he? Come on.
And Rishi's just hanging out, smiling, being gorgeous all the time, too. So I think a lot of them use whatever they think is their appeal. Although I don't think that she's probably...
No, that's the thing. I don't think this is... No.
The thing about it was, the Mail on Sunday, I did read it, it was an extraordinary litany of sort of little sort of bijou character assassinations. The two-word phrase that really caught my eye was socialist grandmother. That was how they described Angela Rayner. I mean, she is a grandmother. At 40, that is quite an achievement in itself. But, to have overcome... I mean, the implication there is that she is, like, council estate trash. I mean, look, pram face, as people call it, whatever. And yet, to have come from that and to have achieved the political status she had is an extraordinary achievement, regardless of the fact that I don't agree with her politics. I acknowledge that. But the way these nasty little put-downs, threaded together...
But now they need to try and find who is the source, and now they're looking for a Tory MP who might have slightly outdated views on women. So, narrow it down.
Not Rishi, I guess. Scott, the first shoe was dropped in France's political summer. Zut alors, it's more Emmanuel Macron, but... There is opportunity for the far right to take some degree of succour from this as well, I think.
People who are following the election will know that Macron did win yesterday in France, and they're calling it a victory without a triumph, supposedly because about 90% of those polled as they were leaving who did vote for Macron said they voted against Le Pen. And now, I mean, they voted against...
No, you were right,
yes.
Against Le Pen, rather than with the enthusiasm for him.
10% voted said that they voted in favour of him as a good elected official.
But then again, I mean, that just reflects the nature of elections, doesn't it, to a large extent? And that's often the way.
Especially in France, the second time around. This is the first, since Chirac, he's the first guy to have won a second round. I mean, a second election phase. And it's the second election in a series of three, because in June, they'll elect the National Assembly. Yeah. And there's a very liberal guy there called Jean, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, I have no French at all, but anyway, Mélenchon is his last name. Mélenchon. And he came in first in the first round between 18 and 34-year-olds in all of France, and he won in Paris. And he did really well in Paris in this election, even though he wasn't on the ballot. So he wants to elect a lot of his people in the French Assembly and kind of put a prime minister in there that will oppose everything that Macron does. But Macron will still have the last say on, foreign policy objectives. And that's part of the reason why Macron didn't probably do well in this election. He wasn't campaigning well enough. And Le Pen was. She was very savage about campaigning. She's very brutal about it. She's really good at it. And he was dealing with Ukraine, admittedly, for a good reason, but couldn't put himself out there enough. And he announced his re-election on March 3rd, which was a tough day to announce a re-election.
Yeah, right.
Overshadowed by Ukraine again. And so when he was trying to do more than one job at once, which he's probably not very good at. But, I mean, for a 44-year-old, I think he's done quite well. And I think...
re-election is not bad. And the fact that people voted against Le Pen, I don't think is necessary.
It's reassuring, although not enough voted against Le Pen, because
there are
the
some
numbers were nearer
interesting
this
trends as well. I don't know if you've seen this, Stephen, that, for instance, the young are going quite extreme. It's actually the elderly, it's the over 60s who've kept Macron in. And there was significant support. There was like more than 50% support among the young for Le Pen, even in the final election.
And also I was reading one article. They were looking at the level of gap has been reducing. So if this lead gets smaller and smaller, I believe we can refer to Zeno to work out that all it will take is just one infinity, and she'll get there.
Achilles and the tortoise.
Also,
I think it's interesting though that they do tend to the extremes. It's very similar to America actually in that regard, because
well, this time around they did, and the numbers tended to match the election in '69, when the youth and the old people went very liberal.
68 ans.
Exactly, and they were almost identical, some of the winning numbers. And what I think is also strange, too, in France at least, is the majority of French are pro-Euro. It's just they don't know how they want to stay in the EU. They're not quite sure what role they want to play. And they're very angry at the British right now. And that role, I think, affected this election as well. Because I think Macron wants a special relationship with the UK, but I think the average French person is not excited.
Because we pulled out of the EU.
There's that, And I think, I think their economy is doing quite well. So the fact that they have a strong economy, you would think they would stick with Macron. He's an ex-economist, and he knows how to jumble numbers. But I think that's not on... I think the youths are really worried about the environment. I think that's a real important subject for them.
Tuesday's Independent now, and here's a rumdo.
Yeah.
It will excuse the local produce pun.
Oh, that one nearly got by me. Sophie, Countess of Wessex, not a real place. And Prince Edward, Earl of Wessex, great pub. Are on tour. They met Gaston Browne, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, and apparently they had a conversation about the issue of Britain paying reparations for slavery.
And Edward said, well, I've got that much on me.
It's difficult to argue about privilege when you turn up on tour, kind of like, oh, look what we're in charge.
On a red carpet.
Well, I know we look wealthy, but honestly, it's a lot of show. This is all
property.
rented.
Apparently, he said they should use their diplomatic influence. Oh, I think you've overshot that because you're speaking to the wrong royals. They might be able to open you an arts centre.
He could probably put on a show about it.
Refinish a coffee table.
Like a TV show about it. But they also said that at some point they wish to not have the Queen as their head of state, but that wouldn't be immediate. I mean, why?
Well, I think it might be sooner than they think, not to have the Queen, but without putting too fine a point on it. Hey, just sit tight.
They were labelled oligarchs, they were.
Yeah.
A lot of the locals were very angry about them even being there.
Really? Who are oligarchs?
The two royals who showed up at Wessex.
They think of them as oligarchs?
They do,
Or you're saying they are oligarchs?
The locals were yelling out oligarchs.
Oligarchs? That sounds confused. I mean, these people predate the notion of oligarch. Well, I suppose oligarch, what does that just mean, the few? That could have been the barons in the old day, couldn't it? But
they still seem low enough down the list that I'd be annoyed that they were the ones that turned up. These are royals that people wouldn't mention in family fortunes.
No.
I mean, you're quite far down the list.
They haven't
certainly now that Wills and Kate have been producing.
Right. And they haven't shown up at public functions very often in the last 10 years. And I wonder why they threw them out there. I mean, because the other two had already been there. It's strange, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. It was when I first saw this, I got confused. Well, is this a continuation? They've been out there for over a month now, but it's not. But the fact that it's not a continuation, it almost. I wonder whether Barbuda, not Barbados, isn't it as well? Which is a weird cross between Bermuda and Barbados, and they're getting this Countess of Wessex. It all feels like this is a sort of knockoff.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little brand.
Slightly off-brand version of the
you get the Aldi.
This one's from the Telegraph now, and this is, joking aside, this is quite worrying and very sad, of course, for families who are affected.
Yes, the hepatitis outbreak, still a mystery. It's now left one child dead, 17 needing liver transplants. Yes, you can say these are small numbers. It's a worrying trend, and it's a huge impact to every family that's been hit by this.
And there's some connection, they think, with lockdown or something, is it? Is this how is this mooted?
one theory, and it's just hypotheses stage at the moment. One of them is that because of the isolation of lockdown, that the immune systems would be more naive in young children. But interestingly, we talked about this on the show last week, and I was saying one of the other theories is that it could be adenovirus, and I said, look, it's bound to happen. A different adenovirus from chimps were used in the vaccine, in the AstraZeneca vaccine, to deliver some of the information. I sat in this seat saying, I'll tell you what, someone online will definitely use word association to get it wrong but prove their own point. Literally, I got home and saw that someone had taken that clip and tweeted it with Stephen Allen on GBNews finds link between...
This is how it starts.
So the research, none of the cases in Britain have been vaccinated because they're so young. Most of the cases involving those under 5.
And it would be an absurd connection to make.
Yes.
But there's no other plausible hypothesis that you think... It
cold food prepared by hand. That's how you get it.
Sorry?
Cold food prepared by hand.
Is that right?
They're eating too many salads, these kids.
Yeah.
These under 5s.
Yes, too many tacos.
Wow.
Again, under 5.
Yeah,
they
maybe
pop
some.
out for tacos a lot.
Yeah, that's how I got it.
You don't want to tell his kids not to eat salads.
Yeah, don't eat.
Could be down the line. We could be Stephen Allen responsible for yet more. but there is no real plausible connection between any of these things, or anything that we don't. It could just be some clumping or some random outbreak, essentially.
Some of the ideas are adenovirus that's either hugely evolved or slightly evolved to become slightly harder for certain people. Then you could mix into that. There don't need to be separate ideas. The idea that your immune system's not as developed because you've had greater isolation. But until that's proven, it's the kind of thing that people will run with as if, I knew it was wrong all along. You'd need to test this before you could say it.
And and it's obviously a very small sample size, as you say. Just to be clear, I said one child dead, very, very sad. 17 in need of a liver transplant. A liver transplant presumably depends on somebody dying with a healthy liver.
No, it does.
No?
Oh, no, sorry, the liver's the one that regenerates itself. So you can donate half your liver. I don't know how long it takes, but at some point you've got your full liver back.
Oh. Right, OK. So there is some hope, some possibility that they will find somebody who will willingly donate.
In the family quite often, because of blood groups,
Fingers crossed for that. Well, that's it for part 1. Watch the adverts consumed by the goods and services. Fill the aching void within you. Support the station. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes for part 2. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, Scott Capurro and Steve N. Allen. So, to Tuesday's Guardian now, and here's a story that I suspect goes against many people's expectations and perceptions.
Yeah, in The Guardian, it said that no London shooting deaths in the last 6 months since Halloween.
That's extraordinary.
There's been no shooting deaths.
Since Halloween?
Yeah.
Was that the last time there was one?
There was, yeah.
That's a bit eerie, isn't it?
And there have only been 27 people shot in 2022 compared to in 2010 and 2011 there were 499.
That's extraordinary.
It's good. It's been attributed to good police work, actually.
Yeah.
Things such as Operation Viper, where special teams took part in getting rid of and tackling gun violence, getting rid of the guns themselves.
Getting rid of the guns.
And they're using drones.
They're struggling to get hold of guns. And
they are. Apparently, gangs can't. They're having to use old weapons that they redesign and make their own bullets.
Flintlock muskets and starting pistols, I think. Like
that are missing from the British Museum,
Yeah.
But it's strange, too, because we've heard this. The stabbings have gotten quite severe.
Yeah.
But shootings are down. But the overall violence in London it's not the Wild West as some people think.
Because the thing you often hear, well, I say often hear, but one thing, I have a criminal barrister friend who says that one of the reasons that deaths are lower than they otherwise would be is the tremendous improvement in the paramedic treatment of people on site. Now they can save lives much more quickly, but those figures would contradict that, or at least would suggest that it's not just that, because that in itself is good. But it wouldn't be that encouraging. It still means the crime is.
And the drug trafficking convictions are way up. So they're putting people away faster.
Yeah.
And that means that those people being put away are losing the money, losing the drugs, and they're in a lot of trouble already. So that's been helping. That's been discouraging.
Yeah, the deaths are down and the cases of shootings are down, so that answers the paramedic thing. I think it's interesting to compare this to that sentence you hear in America all the time, that guns don't kill people. People do. Well,
guns do kill people.
It's not as if we've got a reduction in bad people, but we've got fewer shootings, and they say the supply of guns is somehow mixed. It's bizarre. If you can't get a gun, you can't shoot.
And it feels like it's a classic virtuous circle, because obviously if they can't get hold of guns, they can't shoot each other, but also it de-escalates the necessity for a gun as well, doesn't it? If the culture changes and people don't anticipate that they're going to get shot unless they shoot first,
right?
Then maybe after a few months of that, they go, actually, I don't think I need a gun. And maybe I don't need a gun. Maybe we'll just carry on selling drugs with, with a couple of lead-filled shoes,
And what de-escalates the situation too is the police don't show up as violent, do they, at situations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen film footage of London, of Met cops, kind of stabilizing an unstable person with various tactics and techniques that have nothing to do with gun fighting.
Yeah, well, just like hypnosis.
There's that,
trickery.
too, or throwing things at them, or heckling them. No, but they kind of...
Lots of dogs. Dogs everywhere, different sizes of dogs, kind of running around.
Any distractions, some sparkly stuff. But they kind of...
Dundee.
They surround them, sort of, and move in on them,
Yeah.
It kind of calms them down. Whatever they can do.
Coming into the side of people, apparently, is the trick. I remember I saw Rob Newman, the comedian, doing a set about that once, about how when people come and put their arm around you from the side, it means they think you're mentally unstable. You've been trained. Tuesday's Times, and it looks as though my irreversible decline into bigotry and subsequent ostracisation might be slowed by a simple algorithm, Steve.
Yeah, Google.
There's hope for me.
They've got a new function on Google Docs, don't know if you use it, but it's inclusive language, which makes suggestions of other phrases you could use to be more inclusive. And it's got the same old reactionary types, the knee-jerk snowflakes who love to moan about things angry. That sentence, by the way, lit up like a Christmas tree. Sorry, it lit up like a festive arboreal decoration.
Snowflake is inclusive, though, isn't it? That's a non-gendered term, to be fair.
But the thing is, you can turn this function off. So if you don't like it, calm down. So the actual complaint is, why aren't things the way I want them to be without me doing anything? Why is Google, the thing I don't pay for, not doing exactly what I want?
It is quite funny that I bought a new car recently, and it's got a couple of features I didn't like on the dashboard, and there's always an annoying few hours before you find out how to turn them off. And then it's gone. Well, that's fine,
I don't like the fact that Word turns quotes into curly quotes. What am I, fancy? But I'd turn that off.
Curly quotes? What's that?
Yeah, the quote marks. You can have the proper good old-fashioned ASCII normal symbols, but they updates them to these weirder...
Oh, I haven't seen those. OK.
Oh,
maybe you didn't even notice yet.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
No.
It's terrible if you're trying to write HTML as well.
I'll tell you what the worst one is, though, just on predictive text or autocorrect or autocomplete, whatever is on phones. regularly changes things to the exact opposite of the word you're trying to say. The word was, it completes to wasn't so often. So he goes, I was thinking of you this morning. So I wasn't thinking of you. Just needlessly argumentative.
It keeps changing and to abs. I'm obsessed with my abs.
Yeah, exactly.
An old gay obsessed with his stomach muscle.
There is a way, somebody showed me, where you can ban it from making a certain correction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because once you've done abs 3 or 4 times, it goes, well, I guess he does mean abs. It doesn't make any sense.
Now it feels like I'm arguing with my phone, which is just an old man waving his fist to the sun.
Yeah.
Saying, why is the planet change?
I'm going to write something and put it through this feature and see if I can still get it printed.
I will say, though, I mean, firstly, it's only suggestions, and you can turn it off. But one example is that if you're writing something, it would turn housewife into stay-at-home spouse. You don't need that.
No.
But if you were writing to housewives, if it gave you a nudge to be, oh, by the way, that excludes some people. Because as a new dad and stand-up comedian, so it's not like I work.
Stay-at-home dad.
I'm going to be the primary carer for my kids. So if I get a letter inviting mums to bring the baby to whatever event, I'm going to be left out. If Google could be like, oh, you've just left out all the dads there, I'm in favour of it.
To be honest, our toddler didn't toddle either for quite a while, and I used to feel a little bit angry about that. Bring him to the toddler group, and I was like, he's not toddling. Can I just bring him and plant him where he is?
I should use it when I'm talking to my father, because he won't call my husband. Because he said that makes you the wife. And
I was always thought about that. It is slightly odd, because those terms are a bit archaic in themselves. I understand. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel 100% happy with husband, or did you feel it was a slightly... Because people have done routines about this for forever. You know, partner makes it sound like a contractual relationship,
and main squeeze makes it sound
other half. I mean, most of the middle class, middle-aged in Britain have long had so many euphemisms. The ball and chain.
It did make us feel knocked down a peg, because it made us feel heterosexual. But I told my father, you can call him by his name, and my dad's like, I can't remember his name. I said, there's the problem right there.
I do. I've got to be honest with you, though. I have a friend, Donald, his name is. If he's watching this, he lives in Spain now, so it's unlikely I should be safe. A gay man in his 60s, and he had a partner, and he was Spanish, and it was either Jose or Juan, which are the 2 Spanish names, and I could never remember. My wife immediately remembered, but as soon as I had remembered that I couldn't remember, that became the overwhelming fact. It was just impossible, and I would never be confident. And even though I might say it and get away with it, it's terrible.
Just call him guapo. Just say guapo. Right? Everyone wants to hear that. We all want to hear that.
I think there should be a new word for it, though, stuff like that, because husband always suggested to me a sort of almost like a farm management sort of arrangement. Do you know what I mean?
And my right-hand man...
sort of bossing around.
Right-hand man sounds like something else, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's hard to... We'll find something.
We should work on that. Telegraph now, Scott. This is J.K. Rowling news. Once again, it is non-wizard based. I'm persuaded that she's not really that interested in wizards anymore. I think she's... What have you got on this?
I don't have anything on J.K. Rowling.
Have you not got it? Have you got it, Steve?
So she's praised resilience and courage of lesbian barrister suing Stonewall. The Harry Potter author is pictured standing with her friend Alison Bailey ahead of a controversial employment tribunal. You've got 2 sides of this. One is she's claiming that she lost work because of her position. Well, I guess we'll find out whether that's legally the case or not. But the core issue that everyone's going to get stuck into is the issue of trans rights. And it feels like their opinions have calcified now. People are stuck in the extreme versions of what they previously thought a couple of years ago. And until we can get into the actual conversations without being so offended that someone disagrees on both sides. Again, I like having these conversations without speaking of a side, because that way everyone can listen to what they want to believe into it. One half of the argument is so upset that if you even question it, you're calling it a hate crime. The other argument somehow makes out that every female toilet will be full of sex criminals if it weren't for the definition of a word. Those positions.
And everyone who wants to do sex education in school is a groomer. That's the latest thing, isn't it? And it is extraordinary how everything retreats to the extremes very, very quickly. It's worrying. Stonewall's trajectory, though, has been extraordinary, isn't it? It seems like only yesterday they were still the sort of bastions and the great crusaders, and now suddenly they're...
It's strange, too. So many people want to... It seems as though it's a salacious subject matter for so many people, when actually... what we're talking about here has nothing to do with sexual behaviour.
No.
So it's just odd to me that we can't just look at the medical fact that you cannot change someone's sex, and that's it. The conversation to me is over. That is it.
Well, I suppose we've entered a philosophical realm, and it's not that it's not entirely disconnected from the direction of travel we've been in, at least for the last post-war era.
A little bit.
In which the subjective world of the individual begins to rise in importance in how we organise affairs and politics and so on. And so you have this sort of sense that there are, a notion of gender, which is an internalised reality.
And that's a different subject.
Yeah,
and it's strange to me. Since 9/11, I feel like everyone thinks their opinion is of equal importance. But in front of an audience, I win because I have the microphone. But also, I feel like your opinion about you is who you are. And that's that.
We should be able to get to that point. Maybe we can. I remember, I think, who was it? Might have been Russell Brand or somebody else saying about this recently, that... We get very desperate sometimes. We think that the world is going terribly wrong. But if you just take a couple of steps back and you see, generally speaking, what happens is there is progress and then it gets itself tangled into a bit of a knot, but then everything settles down. By and large, we would all probably admit that life for gay and lesbian people now is better than it was 20 years ago.
Of course it is.
Right?
I mean, when people go on about woke, I think that my life is much easier as a performer than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And some of that restraint and some of that restriction I applied to myself is my own self-consciousness. But it is much easier for some sort of alternative comedian per se, just to make gain for themselves.
It will probably be that way in 10 or 20 years' time for anyone who identifies as trans or whatever, that we will all have come to an accommodation. Let's hope so.
I really think it is now, by the way. I think an audience just wants to laugh.
That's true. Guardian next. Steve, this is a calculated threat to the super wealthy from Labour. This is this period in the election cycle.
Labour doing something that might not benefit the super rich. Wow. Yeah. Look at this as a headline. So it's Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised that Labour will get rid of non-dom tax loopholes. Interesting. Your move, Rishi. What are you going to do now? Upset the voters or upset the wife?
It's quite pointed, that, isn't it? I think they did threaten that under Ed Miliband as well, though, didn't they?
Or Gordon Brown. So it's 2002. He said he wanted to get rid of it. And also there was a quote that something said, we need to act swiftly on this. Well...
Do you know what's a funny thing, though? There's been a bit of a sea change on a few of the issues that it can... I mean, one of the arguments for the non-doms was, and it obviously happened with the Russian oligarchs as well, that although, yes, they're not paying tax, their presence in London is part of what creates it, the sense of it being a super wealthy, a world-class city, the huge towering glass structures and so on. And we do kind of all benefit from that. We do kind of feel we're a bit better than Paris and Berlin and these places, let alone Frankfurt, where they were going to move all the banks after Brexit, because we have this kind of, we have the Lamborghinis and we have the... Now I kind of feel I think people are tired of that, actually. I don't think people want that. They want property to become affordable again.
It's always made me feel a bit dirty, that part of London. A little bit. And I think also, I do miss that edge that meant that people who were not wealthy could live in central London and enjoy it as much as everybody else.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, we moved down to Brighton in about 14 years ago. Brighton was on a microcosmic kind of trajectory similar to London. It had that thing where, initially it's full of artists and bohemians, then all the people who are tired of living in London have got, middle class moved down there, and now it's just become like a little London now, But it would be great if London could be like that again, wouldn't it? If that London could be a place where artists and bohemians, I mean, they moved to Shoreditch, and Shoreditch almost immediately became ridiculously expensive. There's nowhere left for them to go now, but...
Well, they've done Margate, and apparently Frome as well had a bit of an influx.
Has it really? Frome, I might visit. I love Frome.
It's nice
Big
down there,
gutter down the high street, down the middle of the high street, for all the sheep washing.
The jewel of Wiltshire.
Anyway, I don't know, maybe I should be a bit of a Shepton Mallet lad as well, though. I don't know. I'd have to make... Anyway, listen, that's it for this section. We'll discuss Frome versus Shepton Mallet and give you our verdict in part 3. See you shortly.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, with me Scott Capurro and Steve N. Allen. Scott, apparently the world can be changed and saved even if we just swap steaks for stick insects.
Yes, in the Telegraph, they've suggested that less conventional and less environmentally damaging foods are in order. Apparently, if we started eating bugs and stopped eating beef, just beef, gas emissions and global warming thingies would fall by about 80%.
Yeah.
We'd be in much better health as a planet.
It does appear that
just beef.
Cattle are the problem, aren't they? That's right.
It seems to be.
Apparently it's their burping. Everyone thinks it's the farting, but apparently it's actually just belching.
And it's also the gases and the elements used to treat the soil.
Yeah.
So
and huge amounts of water, of course.
A lot of water, yeah.
Irrigation. Although I did read in the same article that apparently that is not a significant improvement over just saying let's eat fish, let's eat eggs, let's eat, if you just eliminate beef but still eat regular traditional sources of protein.
It's true. That's called the optimized omnivore diet. If you are allowed to eat eggs, dairy, fish, and seafood, but no meat,
but I'm
land requirements fall by 80%.
Because that means that suggests still having large herds of cattle to have dairy, doesn't it?
Does.
So I think about dairy, I like cheeses, but I do think that should be a relatively simple thing to artificially create in labs, don't you think?
But every single time I've tried vegan cheese, it's nowhere near.
No.
I'd stop trying, because vegetables are lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely love a vegetable roast. Give me some roast vegetables all day long, but why are we faking cheese?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's weird though, isn't it? You would think that would be fairly... I wonder if it is that the great traditional cheesemakers are not sharing their wisdom with the vegan guys out of some... Do you know what I mean? As if maybe the raw materials you make it from is not the thing so much as the craft and the practice.
I imagine it's quite complex, because cheese has all of the groups, not all of the groups, there's no fibre in there, but you've got fats, protein and carbs to somehow mix together.
Have you ever tried an insect... I would imagine with the insect thing, by the way, we're all picturing like a kind of plate full of kind of prawns or whatever, but it's... I would imagine they mash it up and make it into a sort of meal, don't they? And
it's called an insect. It is an insect meal, and it's a microprotein, and the kind of thing that they use in corn, like QU or... there's a protein in there that they've manufactured.
So would you have any objection to eating that?
I'm not, I don't really eat beef that often.
Oh, really?
Having said that, I had a pork chop for dinner tonight, but... not that often. But I try to avoid that sort of food anyway.
Right.
But insects I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat a bug.
It's you don't want it in your head, do you? But you're all right with this.
Definitely. We've got a bit of bias here already, because if you go back far enough before food came out of factories, the idea would make people go, food out of a factory comes from a farm. But now we're so used to it. Yeah. So because it'll be processed insects, that'd be fine. Although it will mean the TV show I'm a Celebrity will be pointless. You'll be sat there and like, this Z-lister's going to eat a ball of insects. Tucking into cricket here. So what, mate?
Because and this leads into the next story, but there was a time, not that long ago, I believe, when lobsters, now regarded as luxury food, were regarded as repulsive as any other sort of insect.
Well, they are in some cultures still,
So anyway, this is from The Guardian. This is equal rights for these little blighters now, which is this is not going to sit well with farming them and eating them.
A lot of evolution for the crabs.
So crabs and lobsters should get similar rights in the UK as mammals. So now we can cram them into lorries and let them travel on the M25.
Exactly what are those rights? That's a good question.
Well, it's mainly about scientific experiments. The idea is there's new legislation awaiting for royal consent. It's going to be approved in Parliament. It means means that you consider animals that are sentient to have the same rights as mammals. You can't go around doing experiments willy-nilly. The thing is, because there's no rules on doing experiments on crabs and lobsters, we don't know how many experiments are being done, but surely they're not testing makeup on these things. They don't have eyelids.
No.
It seems a bizarre thing to do. But, I mean, for a while, science was not sure whether they felt pain. But why on earth? How would that would be? How would evolution not give you pain? Because pain's useful. It stops you leaving an arm behind when you get trapped somewhere.
Yeah.
So it made no sense.
Jordan Peterson would have a view about this, doesn't he? Have a whole bit about how lobsters experience humiliation when they lose fights and they sort of shuffle off, ashamed of themselves, and go
like
into a death spiral.
lobster. But I mean, maybe we shouldn't be dropping them into boiling water. Let's add that.
No.
If they feel pain.
That isn't them screaming, though. That's apparently their shells shrinking or something. Oh, right. Apparently,
but still, if you couldn't scream, you still wouldn't enjoy. If you had the ability to sense pain, I imagine being dropped into boiling water is suboptimal.
You can't hate crime them anymore.
No.
You can't. You can't crush them with
it's
your foot.
It's hard to know what to say about lobsters, though, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
They probably have different standards of beauty to begin with. So
They do,
look at you with your big claws, Ellen.
Yeah. Why are you sidling aside? What are you running away from? So, you can't threaten them anymore, anyway.
Anyway, Telegraph now, Scott. This is an unusual twist in today's Culture Wars story.
Yes. Vegans are trying to cancel culture farmers, apparently. Dairy farmers are complaining. They're saying online they're being attacked by vegans, and it's reducing their amount of sales, which means that their dairy is going to have to go up in price, especially they're saying because of the Ukrainian conflict. That's going to raise it, which is, I'm not sure about that, but anyway, that's going to raise the price of the dairy as well. And they're saying now that 6% of adults in the UK claim themselves as vegan, although that's probably a lie.
So they're saying that the dairy farmers are saying that the attempts to smear them as like cruel and...
Yes, they're saying that there is significant inflammatory messaging out there online, and it is also, in turn, inflaming the price of dairy.
I've always thought, I mean, this is controversial, I imagine, but I can see the argument that dairy farming is crueler than farming livestock for slaughter, because if you dairy farm, you maintain an adult female cow in a state of discomfort on a daily basis, like endlessly. Her children, I mean, I'm not using ridiculously emotive, but her calves are taken. Her calves are then, if they're male, they are put into a crate and slaughtered for veal. If they're female, they may be raised for further. They experience all kinds of horrific sort of sores, pain, discomfort, friction, burns.
Have you worked or lived on a dairy farm, though?
I mean, I have seen how they work,
It's not always, they're not always treated that way.
No, I'm sure there are good ones and bad ones. And I absolutely, I do try and buy organic, which I'm hoping is shorthand for treated nicely.
Organic,
Is that right? Okay. But by comparison, animals bred for slaughter, I'm not saying they have great lives, but they have undifferentiated days, essentially, and then one day...
They're bashed in the head.
Here comes the sun,
really bad.
Which I think, in a way, is preferable. I mean, I'm not saying either is like a dream existence.
Yeah.
But,
well, the cows have to release the milk at some point if they're raised properly. There is a period where cows do want to get rid of the milk, and there is a healthy and humane way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think too that people are consuming probably too much bad milk, actually.
Right, yeah.
And there is good and bad products in everything.
Yeah.
And a little less of something that's better for you.
I quite fancy the old sort of slightly foaming, warm stuff straight from the pail.
That's what you want. You want the stuff. You want the stuff that used to come in a glass bottle delivered on your doorstep. That's ideal.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Can I throw in just one nerdy science fact, which I love this, is that people used to get these goiters. Problem with your thyroid, you get the lump in the neck. As a little side piece of issue, iodine is a difficult to come by mineral. It's in the sea, you get it in seaweed, not in grass.
Very important when you're growing up. It can affect your cognitive abilities as well.
And that's where the word cretin comes from. But the cows need it as well to get a good yield. So farmers were putting iodine in cow food, not thinking what's the next step. The next step is milk has more iodine in it, and all of a sudden you can't meet a person with a goiter. We solved the problem by adding iodine, not thinking it would be treating a problem. Of course, the point is if then you become vegan and don't drink milk, take an iodine tablet,
Seaweed,
back in the game.
I guess. Now, this one from Tuesday's Times, I found this quite interesting and encouraging, I must say, Steve. This is a change in the weather, a little bit, of the feelings of the British people.
Young people, certainly.
Young people, yeah.
In terms of science versus religion. There's less animosity, and most young people don't see science and religion as opposing forces in a war, which is good, especially, this is Generation Z, especially if you follow the general trend that science discovers something and then now science owns that land. Because there's never really been one thing that's been pushed back.
No.
You capture one angel, then we'll talk. But until then, there's this general trend of originally, thunder, what is it? Well, it must be a god. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll fix that with a bit of science. And from there, everything moves through. We've got less negative attitudes towards religion, and I think my take on that would be because other people's religion impacts our lives less. Like I can shop on a Sunday, I can get the medical treatment that I think I should get. As long as your religion isn't impacting those issues, then there's no reason to be falling out.
But there was a period only about 20 years ago when the new atheism arrived. We had Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, like most famously, but also comedians like Robin Ince and so on. There seemed to be like quite a lot of people who were almost... I don't know, like finding that was a new tribe that they were part of, that they wanted to identify with, a sort of quite militant atheism that was quite sarcastic about people clinging to faith and old-fashioned ideas that didn't necessarily understand, in my view, the role that religion and faith play in life, as if it was still a way of explaining the universe rather than a sort of structure within which to understand our personality,
It's such an intimate relationship people have with whatever they think is their God that, you can't really label any one thing.
No.
That it serves people in one way. It serves people in many different ways.
If that were all that happened, then there'd be no reason for there to be any animosity or conflict. But I think when you get a pushback saying, oh, no, evolution didn't happen, it's creationism, well, now you've suddenly decided to have a scientific conversation from a point of view of what is effectively guesswork. Because unless you do the research to do the scientific method, you're just coming up with an idea.
I mean, I think, to be fair, I would have to say, realistically, if you think it through logically, Darwinian notion of evolution does essentially discredit the Christian notion of the soul and of humans as being something separate. I think it probably just... I mean, there's been an ebbing and flowing of attempts to resituate God within that universe. He's not entirely eliminated. Well, let's put it this way. I think it was Heisenberg said something about when you first drink from the glass of the natural sciences, you quickly become an atheist, but God is waiting for you at the bottom of the glass.
Well, the Big Bang's a great example. You can do all the science, you work out the start of the universe, and the religious people just need to sit there and go, and who did that?
Yeah.
You could do that forever.
Scott, male spiders have evolved a strategy to avoid being eaten after sex, not the same one that you've adopted.
Right. Philipinella prominens, you're welcome. Post-coital exit is that they bounce away from their female partner.
Amazing.
If they don't, she eats them in whole.
Yeah.
And they also apparently produce a bit of thin layer of silk now as they're bouncing away.
Yep.
They drop that silk and then they bounce back. And the silk is between them, and they hope to get a second go.
And if they get, I was reading that apparently if they get 2 or 3 goes, then she goes, this guy's good.
Right.
I'll take his sperm. I will have his babies because he's demonstrated he can get away.
It's a real attempt, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. The number of insects that lose
from...
their heads, though, after sex. I mean, the praying mantis, the most famous one. But watching it is the most horrific thing.
They can accelerate at 200 meters per second, though. And the Chinese examined them in various studies and found they have a springy little joint that they've created that helps them bounce right out.
And tell us the speed. Did you see the speed? It's extraordinarily fast.
Yeah, well,
for a tiny moment, I would...
200 meters per second, I just said.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. 200 metres per second. That is incredible.
But I understand
You can't imagine how... I mean, you couldn't see that, 200 metres, if that went past you. Imagine that, 200 metres per second.
Incredible. But also, I think they're eager, and it's their big moment. So well,
it releases like that, doesn't it?
So
there's some kind of shrimp that can crack a man's skull or something with it. Right. All these, probably a similar kind of... what's your strategy, Steve?
I understand their point of view, because that moment straight after when you're like, I just need to be on my own for a while. Clarity, all the promises of what we do this weekend have gone right now.
I'd love to lay some silk between me and my partner, just have a moment
is that
to myself.
Called, it's not ennui, is it? There is a word for the French word for the specific...
Death of the soul or something.
No, the little death.
The regret, the self-loathing. The petit mort is that's the orgasm. But the... they have some... It's not ennui, Ennui is a general sort of boredom with life.
I've never had bad sex. I have no idea what that's like. Never had it.
Tristesse.
Oh, right.
Tristesse.
I just feel
maybe
like if you do it, how can you feel any regret? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Well, that is the modern world. Now, this is quite a brave thing for an audiobook narrator to do as a hobby, Scott. It's an extraordinary story. Well, I say it's not that extraordinary. It's fairly predictable, really. But a woman has been slagging off the authors that she gets to read.
She's a New York City-based narrator, Kimberly Wetherell, and she is an award-nominated SAG-AFTRA audiobook narrator. She told Female, which is,
part of the Daily Mail?
Something like that, the Sunday edition. She told them that male authors were writing about women in a misogynistic way, and she was expecting a bit of support. Not much kickback, because people would agree with her maybe. And she got thousands of emails, thousands of women responding, saying, will you read this? Will you read that? Will you read this as an example? And so she started reading, and she found that, literary
So
men,
these are passages that people have sent in, not necessarily from books she was professionally reading.
Right, exactly. Not anything she was paid for. She's careful about that, actually, because she does read Stephen King, and she says, well, we've gotten some Stephen King suggestions, but, I'm light on Stephen King because I respect him so much as a human. And she said, and of course she said, and he's really evolved since the 70s when he first started. Like she would know nothing about writing at all, or what evolution in literature means. But anyway, it's called literary man-shaming, and she extracts and reads aloud from novels of male authors.
So have you got any passages there?
Philip Roth from Goodbye Columbus.
Well, that's not surprising.
He's one of my favorite books.
Yeah, but he is widely derided as...
I'll read that quote.
Go on.
Her breasts swam toward me like two pink-nosed fish, and she let me hold them. I don't see how that's bad in any way.
Well, and it has to be, in context, they are in a pool together, aren't they, at the time? They are in water.
And also, he's a naive young man coming of age.
Yeah, I think that's rather sweet.
I think it's sweet, too.
Was that not his novelisation of The Little Mermaid?
The script version. There's much longer quotes here. I won't...
well, I noticed one from Bill Bryson, who's one of my absolute favourite writers.
And J.G. Ballard, too, who's a brilliant writer.
Yeah.
And actually, the quote's quite long, but it's a beautiful quote about a woman that he saw and how he imagined her, what her occupation might be. It's great,
Times now, and more Groundhog Day is famous, and St. Swithin's Day too, I think, for predicting the weather. But apparently today is another example of folklore weather forecasting.
Yeah. St. Mark's Day, which predicts that they're changing the weather around this time. As long before St. Mark's Day as the frogs are heard croaking, so long will they keep quiet afterwards. I've got no clue. Is that a spy? Is that a spy on a bench trying to use the phrase? I mean, again, science might have filled in these gaps, but if you want to have a guess due to St. Mark's Day...
you can use the frogs to see which way. I mean, it was when the frogs started failing to mate, wasn't it, that we became aware that there were endocrine disruptors in the water.
Yeah.
So maybe the frogs were trying to tell us something about global changing.
All right, I'll take that, and let's see what else St. Mark's gives us with his folklore. Apparently, St. Mark's Day, it's possible... there's the St. Mark's fly, we should mention. It's those weird ones that float up and down. They're cool. Yeah. But it's said that if someone stood in a church porch around midnight before St. Mark's Day...
If someone says pork, did you say?
No, it already happened. If someone sits in a church porch around midnight before St. Mark's Day, they could see the ghosts of all the souls who would die in the coming year, which means 2016, they must have been there all night.
Amazing. That is all we have time for. I hope you have learned something useful from that. Thank you to my guests, Scott Capero and Stephen Allen. Tomorrow night, Dominic Frisby will be joined by Leo Kirst and Dana Alexander. Sparks may fly. See you then. Good night.
The woman who married her dog.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm